The streak has been snapped. Quinnipiac men's ice hockey has lost to Yale for the first time since the 2012-13 national championship. And we're trying to get our own streak started here with the second episode of the web series, The Neutral Zone. Hello, everyone. I am Kyle Lavasser, joined alongside men's ice hockey beat reporter Jonathan Banks. Banks, how you doing today?
I'm doing great today. I'm ready to talk about some hockey, Quinnipiac hockey, a little beanpot action. But, you know, what you said about the streak, I mean, we got 10 episodes to go to get there, and I really think we can do that.
We are in the home stretch for ECAC hockey, both on the men's and women's sides. We'll be talking about Cass Turner's squad later on. They have their last weekend of conference play winding down. And we also have Kirby Paulson joining us in studio, who will be talking about the Beanpot tournament and other out-of-conference play throughout the NCAA. Kirby, good to see you.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Fantastic. Always glad to have you back on the Neutral Zone, Kirby. Always glad to see your smiling face.
Oh, Kyle, that was so sweet.
What can I say? Just always happy to see you, Kirby. All right. Well, you know, let's get things started. I think with the biggest game, basically of the weekend and so far in the second half of the season, that's men's hockey versus Yale. MJ Baird and I were both at Ingles Rink in New Haven, the Whale. So let's take a look at how the Bobcats did against their rivals, the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and Quinnipiac has not lost to Yale since the 2013 national championship, so we'll see how they carry on here.
They beat Yale 3-0 at home earlier this season. And here it's Billy Sweezy that gets the scoring started for the Bulldogs. That first goal, always so important, especially in these rivalry games. And you know, it's how the Bobcats have faced adversity this season that's been whether they've succeeded or not. And here they are, Brandon Fortunato right in front of the net.
That's a third game in a row with a point after only having 2 assists to start off the season.
Looks like he's starting to heat up a little bit.
Absolutely.
Here in the second period, the Bulldogs trying to heat up again. The Bobcats, Odin Tufto, what a season for the freshman.
Absolutely.
He now has 30 points overall this season. The Bulldogs will again tie it late in the second period. And here again, nothing Keith Petruzzelli can do on the 2-on-1. Bulldogs with a 3-2 lead going into the third period. And here late in the end of the game, Chase Prisky hits the crossbar. 6-on-4 opportunity for the Bobcats. There were plenty of chances for Quinnipiac's power play late in the game. You know, Rand Pecknold said he probably hit around 8 posts and the puck just couldn't find the back of the net. It was just a great game,
yeah.
Banks, whatever way you draw it up. At the end of the day, though, Quinnipiac cannot find the back of the net. The Bulldogs go on to win 3-2, their first win, like we said, since the 2012-13 national championship. And my question for you now, Jonathan, this game had so many implications for the ECAC standings as well as the playoffs going forward. How important was this loss?
For Quinnipiac, I think it's huge, especially the fact that they haven't lost to Yale since that 2012-13 season. Now, they beat Clarkson, they beat St. Lawrence, they had that great weekend last weekend, and this weekend they kind of take that loss, and this loss is, just an ordinary loss in the standings, but it's a huge morale booster, and it's really something that Quinnipiac is going to need to do to recover this weekend when they have Union and RPI.
Yeah, the way I look at it, they're coming off such a great weekend against number 3 Clarkson, who they upset, and St. Lawrence, where they took care of business. So, you know, I think there's a buzz around Hamden where you think, okay, maybe they're back to where they were a couple years ago, the perennial powerhouse that they are in
like
NCAA
your freshman
hockey.
year.
Exactly. So, you know, you see that win against Clarkson, it brings back memories. There were guys like Chase Prisky and Tanner McMaster that said, this reminds me of the number 1 team country that made it to Tampa. So you see that, you think, okay, they're going to be good for the rest of the regular season. And they go and lose to Yale. And I really don't think it's the end of the world. I think, honestly, it might even be a good thing to really kick them into the right gear and realize, hey, we're the team that lost to Yale. You don't want to have that reputation to go out for the rest of the year. And I think it's going to be a motivating factor for them going into the playoffs and say, hey, you know, we lost to Yale. People have been talking about this being a bad season for the whole year. We don't want to go out like that. We want to make some noise going forward into the postseason. So I think this might be a good thing. You know, we saw them shut out Brown the next day.
Yeah.
Kirby, what are your thoughts? I mean, you know, you've been here for 3 years now. What do you think of this men's team?
I mean, I think the big word that we've heard all season that people are throwing around is inconsistency. You know, I know plenty of us have said it as well. And when you look at it, you know, like you guys said, Clarkson, St. Lawrence, great series. They come in, have that weird run with Yale. Really good game. Ended up losing that one and then beating Brown, of course. So What that says to me is that puts the emphasis on this weekend. You know, you're heading into the playoffs, and everybody in ECAC hockey is going to have a chance at that playoff run. This is the weekend where you want to show up. They showed up against Clarkson. They want to do the same thing against Union, which is a very good team. They're third in the standings in the conference. You want to make sure you're putting your best effort out against those guys as well. And then you want to finish this weekend strong. So going in with a little bit more consistency into this playoff run might not be the worst thing for this Quinnipiac team.
Well, let's take a look at the conference standings right now. There's a lot of parity or mediocrity, whatever you want to call it, in the middle of the standings. Those top 4 teams will get byes in the first round of the ECAC playoffs. So right now, Cornell, Clarkson, Union, and Harvard will have byes if the season was to end today. And then you have Colgate through Quinnipiac. Only 2 points separate those 5 teams with Colgate, Dartmouth, Princeton, Yale, and Quinnipiac. So this weekend is really going to have a lot of implications for who does get home series in that first round, because seeds 5, 6, 7, and 8 will host the first round playoffs, and you know that's going to be a big difference going forward. So if the playoffs were to end today, or the regular season was to end today, Quinnipiac would be playing Yale in the first round of the playoffs. So again, that game, like I said, it might be a good motivating factor. Give them a little, a little something extra to play for in that first round.
Yeah, the Battle of Whitney Ave would be great. But Kirby, I want to ask you, Quinnipiac obviously in the 9. There's a tie with Yale, Princeton, and Dartmouth up there. So chances are they'll be in that 8-9 matchup. Who do you think Quinnipiac would prefer to play out of those 3 teams?
Well, I think travel and budget-wise, I think they'd have no problem going down to Yale. But in reality, I don't know if look, all the teams in that spot are tough competitors. They know this. They played against Princeton. They had a tough game against Princeton a couple of weeks ago. We all remember that one as well. I think it would be really interesting to see them go up against Yale. I don't know who they'd rather play. I think the attitude in hockey is no matter who you play, you're going to put your best effort out there and leave it all on the ice and go from there. But I think from a fan perspective, and even for a journalist perspective, because that would make the drive easy for us, it would be really cool to see that rivalry and that Battle of Whitney Ave get going down at Yale.
Absolutely, Kirby. And you know what I found interesting was after the game, I talked to Captain Chase Prisky of the Quinnipiac Bobcats, and he seemed very different than just any regular loss.
He's been around the block.
You can tell that losing to Yale just meant a lot more to him, and I'm sure he'd like another shot at the Bulldogs. Let's take a look right now. Let's just talk about this upcoming weekend for them, because it's a big one. Union, very good team. I think a lot of people were expecting a down year after the senior class that they lost. They come back. Their offense, it's really been sparked by one of the best power plays in the conference. They've been hot lately, and then you have RPI the next day. It could be a trap game if you look past them. Quinnipiac lost at RPI earlier this season. RPI, the second worst team in the conference, just above St. Lawrence. Banks, what are you looking for this weekend?
This weekend, there are a lot of storylines. Union's won 7 of their last 8, with their only loss being 4-3 against Cornell. They've got Ryan Scarfo, Rinaldi. They've lost Spencer Fu to the Calgary Flames and Mike Vecchione to the Philadelphia Flyers organization. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Quinnipiac responds. Depends who they're going to put in net, which would determine my result. But Quinnipiac needs to be stable defensively, and they need to find goals early against this Union team.
Just quickly, since we touched on goaltending, what have you thought of both Petrozelli and Shortridge over the last few games, and who would you go with going forward?
I think they've both honestly been solid these last few games. I mean, it's tough to say what Rand Pecknold is going to do. I think he's going to split them again this weekend. I think Petrozelli is going to get the start against Union, and Shortridge will get the start against RPI. It seems like Petrozelli's been playing the bigger games against a bigger team, and Shortridge is playing those lesser games these last few weeks.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll touch on the women's hockey team and their chances going forward into the ECAC playoffs. Stick with us.
Hello, and tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired, and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well,
come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. QCash is accepted.
now that's a sandwich.
Bobcat Breakdown, presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcats Sports Network.
We are your source for debate.
Did they make the playoffs last year, Tom Jenkins?
When it clicks, it clicks.
We dissect Quinnipiac athletics on a scale you've never seen before.
With Tobia, it almost looks like she's reaching a little bit.
Plus, we bring in the biggest names surrounding college sports.
We are live here at the Times Union Center with Jay Billis.
And of course, some comedy.
But you can only have so much arena food.
I think you're crazy.
Bobcat Breakdown. Tuesdays at 9:30.
Thanks for sticking with us on the Neutral Zone. The women's hockey team has one regular season weekend before the ECAC playoffs begin. So let's take a look, Jonathan, at the ECAC standings going into that last weekend where Quinnipiac will play Yale and Brown on the road. You see the Bobcats currently at 5th in the standings at 11-8-1. They have 23 points so far. And, you look at it, that gap between them and St. Lawrence and Cornell, who are tied for 3rd right now and have the 3rd and 4th seats locked up. Quinnipiac will not get a bye in the first round. Even if they sweep this weekend, they will finish with 27 league points, which would be good enough for 5th in a home playoff series. But it's been an interesting year so far for the women's hockey team. I think those 4 teams are just at another level compared to the rest of the ECAC. Do you think the women's team can make some noise, though, going into the playoffs?
Make some noise. They definitely can. The problem is they lack that offensive firepower. I mean, Sam Miskevich has 13 goals. Brooke Bonsteel has 10. Then other than that, they have Kutu Godbout in Lancaster. Katie Tabin has 11 assists. But other than that, they don't really have that much firepower to get the job done throughout all 4 lines. But I think the real key here is Abby Ives. And Abby Ives, we don't know. We can't really speculate about her injury. We don't know how serious it is. But it's huge. She's obviously their best goalie when healthy. She's played in 28 games. Sure, goals against average, I believe, is 1.72, something along that range. And Allison Small is a backup, and she keeps them in games, but she's only won once in 7 appearances. So I really think the health of Abby Ives depends on whether or not Quinnipiac can make a run. Yeah,
the way I see it, this women's team is just a year or 2 out from really competing in ECAC play. They're going up against some of the best teams in the country. All those 4 teams are national powerhouses: Clarkson, St. Lawrence, teams of that stature. It's just a young scoring team, I think. Players like Brooke Bonsteel, once they have a year or 2 to really develop, they're going to take this league by storm. But it's still a really good season so far for the women's team. So let's take a look at this upcoming weekend.
Yes, let's do it.
They'll be on the road at Yale and Brown. Our own beat reporter, MJ Baird, will be there at Ingalls Rink again. It's the game of the week, if you will. And it's been an interesting season so far for this matchup because Yale, despite them being below Quinnipiac in the rankings, they have already won twice. Now, it's tough for a team to win 3 times in a season, but they do have home ice advantage, and they're both playing for something. So, who knows what's going to happen? I think what's really interesting about this Quinnipiac team is that they're beating teams and playing up to their team's levels. Like St. Lawrence, they'll tie a team above them in the standings. Then they won't take care of business against the teams that they are supposed to in the standings.
Like Brown lost 13 straight. Who they play this weekend, they only beat them 2-1.
Exactly.
So it really all depends on which Quinnipiac team is going to show up on what given day. But now I want to get Kirby's thoughts on this. Kirby, Quinnipiac has Brown and Yale this weekend. What can you give me about either game?
Well, first thing, let's just jump back to the conference real quick. I think it's a good testament to the strength of the conference this year to have those top 4 teams right up there at the top of the national standings here. I think it's the same idea. You want to go into this weekend, you want to win both of these games, take as much momentum as you can into this playoff run, because nothing's a guarantee once you hit that. You talked a little bit about the fact that they're lacking offensive firepower, and you don't want to speculate on the injury, and I agree with that. The one thing that you can say is you just never know how playoff hockey's going to run out. So I'm interested to see how this weekend kind of pushes them forward into the next run.
Absolutely. And the storyline this whole season, Kirby, has been, where's TT Cianfrano been? How do you think this offense has really been doing despite the lack of goal scoring from her?
It's always tough because, again, you have to replace as many points as you're trying to do. They've done okay. Kyle, I agree with what you said. I think they're at least a year or 2 out from really being at the top of that conference. I think they can get there. They've got a lot of good young talent. When we see the recruiting sheets coming in, we'll have a better idea of that. But for now, they're doing a pretty decent job. I think it's right up to par.
All right, Kirby, let's touch quickly upon your favorite Hockey East. The Beanpot Tournament was this past weekend. What were your thoughts on the tournament?
It's a national holiday, man. I mean, it's right up there next to the 4th of July. I mean, look, here's the thing. On the men's side, it was absolutely fantastic. Northeastern's able to break that drought of 30 years. Adam Goddeck goes out, scores a hat trick. They beat BU 5-2. God, Dad, Hobie watch. But, on the women's side as well, very exciting game over there as well. Boston College beating Boston University 4-3 in overtime. Testament to Boston University and Brian DeRocher's squad for putting up a fight like that. But again, the commentary guy for the women's bean pot screaming Tony Amiano like Beethoven on the piano, that's really fun. So again, a tradition for bragging rights. It's good stuff. Cheers to college hockey, man. That's what you love to see.
Yeah, and Kirby, us as college hockey lovers all love the Beanpot. We're all watching. But what do you have to say to some people who don't think the Beanpot has any importance anymore?
I just think that's a silly argument, man. I just think it's a silly argument. I don't think that's an argument at all. I don't even want to talk about it.
Kirby, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to go and get some barbecue up in Lake Placid if the teams end up making it.
Yeah, man, you and me, I'll drive.
All right, well, that's all the time we've got for the Neutral Zone for all hockey-based Quinnipiac content. I think that was right.
That was good.
Make sure to follow us online at Q30TV.com and on social media at Q30 Sports. We'll see you next time.